welcome, Jeroen Corthout. Thank you for coming on here. I am excited to have you. Jeroen is co-founder of Salesflare, a SaaS startup, and Salesflare was founded in 2014, 8 people, and based out of Belgium. So I'm really happy to have you here. It's a really interesting stuff that you're working on, and also a story about podcasting and how you've been on a lot of podcasts lately. And I'd love to dig in and explore on the why and how that's going, but more about Salesflare. So on the funding side, you've raised 406,000, so seed funded. And if I can give a little bit of an explanation, Salesflare means no more manual data entry for sales folks. So it's the perfect CRM for any startup or small B2B business that wants to make more sales with less work. I don't know who doesn't want to do that. That sounds like a smart idea. The CRM fills itself out. It synchronizes with your email, calendar, phone, social media, and organizes all the data for you. And there's a free trial, so you don't have to input your credit card. So anybody that's interested in test driving. And what I find interesting and fascinating from when we last spoke is you've actually been on more than 100 podcasts. And you had that day that we spoke when I met you, you had like 3 that day. So I'd love to start out by asking you, why did you decide to do that? That's a lot. And how is it going for you? Is this part of your marketing strategy? Let's chat about that first.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, first of all. So let's just dive right into it. As you can imagine, in the CRM space, there are a lot of software companies. There's I think if you look on G2, there's 656, I think is the latest number. So a lot of companies. We do something new in the sense that we bring a sort of next generation CRM that fills out itself, and it's easy to use at the same time and all that. We get rated really highly on platforms like G2, but that doesn't really matter much in the end when it comes to how popular we are. I mean, we're very popular with our users. But I mean popularity in terms of the amount of people, because first of all, there's all these CRMs, and secondly, there's also a few really big ones. And the thing is, everybody is competing for the same traffic, and the bigger ones have way much more money to spend. Some of them also generously outprice us. And in that way have 10 times more revenue per customer than we do per year, which means that they have way more money to spend on attracting people, which means it's very hard for us to get a sizable part of that traffic. We can definitely not spend money on things like paid ads, etc., because they outspend us. They have to. They're super big and they have to keep growing, and they just spend their money everywhere and push everyone else out of the market. So we don't grow based on paid ads and all that. That would be nice and easy, but we grow mainly based on word of mouth. That's our customers telling other people. It's based on still Google searches and review platforms and all that. We're quite high rated, so if you search a bit, you'll find us at some point. And then third, we have a lot of content marketing going on that ranks very well in Google. We're good at creating quality content that is something that people want to read also. And it's not like this kind of usual fluffy stuff written by copywriters that that read first what other copywriters wrote because they don't really know what they're writing about. But their job is to fill a blog with SEO content, so that's what they do. We don't like that kind of thinking, so we only have people who actually know what they're talking about, write stuff, which immediately makes a difference. It's not that hard. Now, we do all this kind of stuff with our own channels, which is essential, so organic channels, let's say. But then we also figured that we have our audience, which has a growing size, but it also makes sense to basically add value to other people's audiences. So to partner with other companies and with other people, and to basically share and work together, and podcasts for us are a part of that. And podcasts are actually a very nice part of that. First of all, it is a great way of sharing a lot of information with a little amount of work when you're a marketer. Like when you consider, for instance, blog posts, which take quite some time to write, and people often don't really share everything in a blog post. It's they share some smart stuff superficially, but it's not at all like you're sharing in a conversation on a podcast. It has a totally different level, and of course, it's also consumed at different moments in different contexts and all that. But I think what I personally appreciate most when I'm listening to podcasts is like this ton of information that you can get in a small amount of time. But it's also on your end when you're creating a podcast that it's not an enormous time investment. Like we're having a chat now, which might take up to an hour. I don't know exactly, but that's basically the majority of the time I spend on this. While a blog post will easily take me almost a day to write if I want to write a good one. And it's
I was just going to say that you hit it right on the head. Like that's exactly what was just like a light bulb going off when I started the podcast and I still have like playbooks and articles that are hanging out on Google Drive, not finished. And yet these podcasts, I could do 3 a week. They always get done. And it's because you're right. That's the hour you put in and then the process of getting it out, editing, posting it, right? It's not the same as writing.
No. Yeah, it also has this. I mean, the advantages are that it's more personal. You really get more personal with your audience, and you didn't write words, and they write it, and they read it, and they imagine their own voice in their head or something. They hear your voice explaining stuff, but also you go further in conversations. Like you might share things that you're not sharing in a blog post when you're overthinking it. It's not an enormous amount of work, which is nice. That the disadvantages, of course, are that, but you can deal with them. But it does not really rank in Google unless you make a transcript, which is a very effective strategy. I have a podcast myself and make transcripts of every episode, but proper transcript. Like we have an automated one made by rev.com. It's a service for that. They have people cleaning it up, and then I still have a person cleaning it up further, so that it's actually readable. It's an actual text. And these, when you type interview and the name of the person, with a lot of famous people I had on the podcast, it will be the first search result you find. So it does get some traffic then from people really interested. It's not necessarily traffic that will immediately convert to using Salesflare per se, but it's good.
Well, that explains it. Did you want to add something else? I mean, you basically.
I was thinking, yeah.
You basically hit on, the question I had, which was so many podcasts. It's definitely part of your marketing strategy, and you're being very thoughtful about it and why you want to, on top of all of the organic stuff, growing your word of mouth, you want to partner with others and, share ideas, work together. And that's kind of like the foundation for why you're doing it. So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I gave a quick pitch around the company, and I might not have done it justice. So if there's anything you want to add, like who is Salesflare really for? Who are you targeting? What is the big problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, no, I think you sort of hit it on the head there as well. But you said small businesses is actually small and medium-sized businesses nowadays. So we offer a CRM system. I'll begin from this. I'll start from the beginning. We offer a CRM system, so customer relationship management system, to small and medium-sized businesses. It's one that is aimed at B2B businesses, and it's mainly around sales. I mean, it's sort of there's a lot of gray area. What is sales and what is marketing? You might say it has some marketing tools in there as well, but it's mainly built for the sales team. And when you ask the end users, like the people actually using Salesforce on a day-to-day basis, they mostly say it's for me to follow up my leads and my customers in a better way. But it does way more than that. But that's the basic use. Now, why did we start another CRM company? I mean, obviously we knew that there were a lot of them, and that it was going to be hard to compete because there were some bigger players and all. We saw a big issue with CRM systems, and we wanted to solve that. And the issue is that most CRM systems they're for sales teams, but the sales team kind of hates it. So the sales team doesn't want to work with it. They don't fill it out. And I mean, us for a while as well, we thought, well, it is like that. That cannot be solved. It's just like when I was doing customer interviews for this, some people said like, well, it is what it is. Salespeople are lazy. They just need to get using. And if they don't use it, we have a very effective thing, and that's taking away their bonus. This kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, but maybe the software could be better. And they're like, no, the software it's as good as it can be. It's really not the software, it's the salespeople. And that's what we also believed for a long while, until we saw that actually, apart from all the usability stuff, which is sometimes baffling when you use an app on your phone and then you get to a sort of enterprise application, how different the usability level can be. Obviously, that's a big issue. But also, what we saw is that in a CRM, you're very often just filling out information that is already available in another system. So, for instance, you go into your emails and you start emailing someone, and then afterwards you go in the CRM and said you emailed. That was actually what happened when we started the company. Nowadays, there's more and more companies that have email sync. But back then, that was a weird thing. Actually, when we started presenting Salesflare to people, they said, like, emails in your CRM? Shouldn't you just like only have the important ones in there and copy them in there? Things like that. Now, in your mailbox, you can see people that you're emailing with. There's names and there's email addresses. There's actually also email signatures. We pulled that in as well. There's phone numbers and positions and social profiles and whatnot. You can see how strong relationships are based on the amount of emails that are going back and forth and all those kind of things. We map that as well. We pull in the emails, obviously. We insert email tracking. We link that up with website tracking. Then we pull meetings from your calendar, detect people in there as well. All the information that is in the calendar, we process. Then there's calls in your phone. We pull those in as well. Everything gets matched. So based on, this is a matching email address, there's a phone number, that phone number came out of the email signature, it matched up with the call. So it all combines it automatically. Pull some information from social media and company databases and all. And like that, it basically automates what you as a salesperson would normally do for hours in a day, is like getting information from all kinds of places to put it in your CRM, which makes that the CRM has way more data than you'd ever manually input, and it has it consistently because computers are really good at collecting data. And then based on that, our CRM can also help you to sell, which is in the end the point. So we sort of solve the bottleneck, and we can also do a way better job at giving you the solution, which is helping you with your sales.
How do you help with the sales? I'd love to, I totally get the whole like adding the information, it's up to date, it pulls it, it's the relevant information. And then how do you use that? How does the salesperson use that? How does the CRM help with using that info?
Yeah, it's on many levels. And so you, for instance, we have automated tasks, the sort of suggestions that say like, hey, it looks like you haven't been in touch with this customer for X days. And you've said that if somebody has an opportunity in this stage, like you're in this stage, like for instance, you've just made a proposal to that customer, then you want to hear them every 3 days, and it's been 4 days, so maybe you should follow up. That's one of the things we do. We detect whether there's emails that go unanswered and that aren't archived or deleted or whatever, and we suggest that to people. When there's meeting notes you didn't put in because the software cannot make the meeting notes and put them in yet, so you still have to do that. So it gives you a suggestion there as well. By the way, all of these suggestions also disappear when you actually do it, and you don't need to check it off, it knows. So it gives you a full overview of everything that happens in a sort of notification center, because all of these things come in live, so we can notify about them. You can turn off and on what you want to be notified about. You can have basically all the background information on a company and the contacts and all in your view. And you can also visualize it in a pipeline like you're used to in most other CRMs nowadays. You have this visual drag and drop pipeline. And then we have a lot of functionality around emailing as well, which ranges from email tracking connected to web tracking, to email templates that you can really quickly use, an email sidebar in your emails, but also you can send automated emails based on what happens. So you could say, for instance, if a customer reaches that stage and we tag them with this, then send them that email. And maybe we haven't heard them for 5 days or whatever. You can set up whatever you think of. Any data that you have in Salesflare can be used to trigger automated emails, or even sequences of automated emails if you wish, until they reply, for instance.
Awesome. Okay, that answers that question. I want to come back to like creating good stuff with your content marketing, but not yet. First, I want to ask you about your team. It's 8 people. What's everyone working on?
Let's say we have 2 sides to the business. It's building the software, and the other part of the business is talking to customers, connecting with customers, being the bridge between customers and the product, let's say, and bringing it to more people. So you could say the product and the business side of the business.
Okay, great. And how do you spend most of your time? Are you kind of like across all of these folks on both the product and the customer side, and obviously on podcasts every week?
Yeah, I across all of them, yeah. And also I'm also the overhead, let's say, the HR and the finance and all that. But actually, most of my time is spent on marketing.
Okay. And that's why you're on the show, because I want to dive in deep and ask you some questions. So let's talk about marketing. What's working well for you? And you're, still at that early stage startup, right? You're like gaining the customers, you're gaining the traction. What channels are working well? You did mention content marketing and how you aren't just like SEO stuffing, right? Let's talk about that more, and any other channels that you want to bring up.
Yeah, most of the other ones, like I said, was word of mouth, and it's it's other people mentioning Salesflare and review sites and all that. When it comes to content marketing, what we do is the following. I'll simplify the process a bit. So we look at topics that we didn't cover yet, that people search for, and that are not insanely difficult to rank on. Like you have tools like we use Ahrefs as a tool, and in there you can see what the search volume is. You can see what the keyword difficulty is. This is based on the amount of backlinks the posts have in the top results. They calculate how difficult it's going to be to rank, and then we use that also to find different variations or maybe other keywords. What also is a very simple way of researching keywords is just using Google itself and typing something and seeing what pops up as a suggestion. Those are usually popular stuff, and then you can put them in a tool like Ahrefs to find more information about it. Now then, if we find keywords and find some that might be interesting, we'll also do an extra check, like how closely linked are these keywords to Salesflare, and if it's very closely linked, then you can also grade them on how sort of unique and convincing is our feature here that we would connect to Salesflare. Like for instance, you write a thing about sending mass emails, for instance. Is Salesflare, is that really something that Salesflare is really good at, or is it just a side thing or so? Is it core or not? And then you give scores, and the more it's connected to something we do, the more the article is also capable of generating leads. There are a lot of articles that we wrote that are not at all sort of connected to Salesforce functionality, and that's fine also. They most often get a lot of traffic, and maybe more traffic than some of the others, but they don't convert very often to trials. It will be people that once come on our blog, then maybe read another blog, and then maybe another one. We retarget them with Facebook ads with more interesting blog posts. But it's they don't have when you think about business value, it's not immediate for sure. The ones that are more linked to Salesflare, that will bring us business-wise a much quicker return. Then when we decide what we're going to write about, which keyword, you basically type that keyword in Google, and then you check out the first post that appear, the first page. The intent there is to find out what the intent is of the people that search, because you want to know what they expect to read. I mean, it's hard to guess based on a keyword what people have in mind when they're typing that keyword. But when you read these posts that appear in Google, you'll quickly find out, because you'll see patterns in the first ones, like, oh, they found this, they spend a lot of time reading this, and that's why Google then ranked it higher. So this is probably what they're looking for. Now, when you find out what they're looking for, and you sort of match that up with other keyword variations, like you have some more long tail keywords. They're looking for something. There's long tail keywords. What many copywriters do is just stuff their blog posts with all these keyword variations. That's obviously a good idea to a certain extent, because you'll get more traffic from more different keywords. But when you overdo it and you don't align it what people are actually looking for, and you don't turn it into a readable, do you say sensical? Because you say nonsensical, but I don't know what a sensical is a word.
Something that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll launch the word sensical. An actual sensical article. So when you know what people expect to read, and you know what good long tail keywords could be, then you can start making sort of a flow for the article. You can define how you're going to bring it to people and what's the story going to be, whatever. And then when you have that flow structure, you can start filling it. We, like I said, don't employ copywriters for that. From experience, to get a good quality article, it's really, really hard with a copywriter. You almost write it completely yourself and then hand it over. Otherwise, it's just super hard. Yeah, it's just generally super hard to have someone write something that doesn't know what the topic is about, and that's usually what happens. So I prefer to have someone who's not necessarily a great writer write something, but that actually knows the topic very deeply, over somebody that writes really well but doesn't know anything about it, and then has to sort of dig into the topic and understand it superficially and then write about it.
The gold is when you find that person that's both, right? The person that is the expert and also knows how to write. So yeah.
I would say in some areas that's very easy, and in some other areas that's very difficult. Like, for instance, we did a content marketing masterclass. It was very, I mean, I have a friend, she's great at content marketing. She writes really well. She knows all about content marketing. It's easy. I mean, content marketing, great writer, easy. Then we did a startup funding masterclass. This actually means like it's a series of blog posts that are connected to each other around a certain topic. So it's like a superstructure on what I just explained, you could say. One about startup funding, and another friend of mine, he knows all about startup funding, and he writes quite well. He's not a copywriter, but then try finding someone who is good at sales and also good at writing. That's really hard for some reason. To find sales experts that can actually write a proper text is not as easy. So it depends on the topic.
Yeah. So who's actually writing? Is it you for the most part? Are you spending time on these articles?
I'm spending time on articles when I don't find anyone else, and that's often, yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it. Cool. So thanks for diving deeper into like how you do use SEO. You just use it in a very thoughtful, methodical way, just like you outline the different steps and like the scoring and the long tail keyword and making sure you understand intent, right? Based on like the first Google result or the initial Google results that you find. Great. Love it. And it sounds like word of mouth is also working well for you. How do you make that happen? How do you get customers to spread information? Do you ask them to do it? Is there anything else that you do that is kind of more than that?
In terms of word of mouth, no, we don't ask our customers to. We've tried that. We tried this kind of referral campaigns, like we did one at the beginning of 2020. There was something like give 20, get 20. Like you would refer someone and you would get $20 and they would get $20, something like that. I don't remember. People don't get incentivized by that. People want to be a good person and refer you to someone when it makes sense. And the only way they will do that is if they're happy. So we just focus on making them very happy. That's by building a good product. It's nothing to do with marketing here. Well, you can market it in a good way and then have them use it. I mean, obviously there's a little part of marketing here, but building a good product is one, and then giving outstanding customer support, at least for us, is definitely number two. We go above and beyond there and build relationships with people, and that really, really pays off. It's often the people with which we have the best relationships that will refer us. It will be way less likely that people who never talk to us and don't know us. I mean, that just use the software, and there's these people that use the software and you never hear from them, that they refer. That hardly happens, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So it's almost like I would say that this is marketing, right? You're making your customers happy. You're making sure you focus on CLV, customer lifetime value, make sure they stick with you, customer support, building relationships. That's your brand, right? So it definitely, I would say that it is tied to marketing. That's where you put your focus, and that's how you spread the word of mouth. So that is great. What about challenges? What are you trying to figure out right now? And I know there's probably like a bunch of different things going on at once, and you're getting pulled in different directions, but what would you say are the big ones?
Our continuous challenges is that we cannot just grow based on paid channels, that it's searching how we can get more traffic from other places. Then that's part number one always. Then part number two is working on conversion. There are different ones there. We'll probably redo the website this year, which will be a huge exercise to get the web to trial conversions up. Then trial to paid, we are constantly working on improving the onboarding experience there, next to just generally making the product more easy to use. We have a special type of issue we track, which is called a UX improvement. When something is unclear or whatever, then it's tracked that way, and then it's treated like a bug. We prioritize it in the same way. But on the onboarding side, we also put in a ton of effort to just make sure that it flows very nicely, and it's a good experience, and it's clear, and people know what to do. I don't know whether we've tried making a trial on Salesflare, but if you do, you might see that first you get a walkthrough which explains you Salesflare. While showing you the value immediately, it also makes it visual, and it shows you how to use it at once. It's not super long, but it's sort of interactive tour. We built it ourselves. We didn't use any tool because it goes way beyond what any tool can do. That ends with fireworks, because you just dragged your first opportunity one way, and then you land in the same place, but then in your own account, at least after you connect your emails. At the end, we ask, like, you want to connect your emails and create an account, and then you get this onboarding guide, and this guide has 12 steps, which the first one is start a trial, which you've just done, so check. And the last one is subscribe. So there's actually 10 steps in between to do. And all of these steps, they have an article and a video that can explain you how to do it. When you click on it, it goes to the place where you can do it. And the guide minimizes from a big block to a small thing in the bottom. So it's still there. And when you actually complete the step, it automatically checks it off, and you can click on the next one. So it's a very interactive, easy experience. Plus, it gives you extra days on the trials when you complete the step. So you start off with 7 days on the trial, but completing these steps gives you like 1 day extra, or 2 or 3 or 4. I think the maximum is 4 days extra. So you can get up to 30 or more days if you're more people on the team even, which motivates people to really go through the setup guide, which then increases our conversion, but also lowers our churn, because we've seen that people who set up the software better during the trial are way less likely to churn in the long run, which is a very remarkable sort of thing. But we saw that in the data. The people who actually get on the software and immediately like, oh, I like it, and put in their credit card are most likely to churn. It's the ones that are a bit more thoughtful about it that are less likely. And then it also actually, when you complete these steps, if you're in a team setting, it sends notifications to the rest of the team saying like, Anna just did this and it gained you 4 extra days in the trial. Way. So we give it that extra vibe around it as well. And then obviously we do all the standard stuff. We do our best also to really get in touch with people in a non-salesy way. We don't have a separate salesperson or so. Supporter and sales is the same role, and it's actually more of a support role than a sales role. It's helping people to be successful rather than trying to negotiate a contract with them or whatever. We also don't negotiate contracts. So. And then actually, I also automatically connect with every person who signs up for a Salesflare trial, at least if they have a company email address with which they sign up. I connect with them on LinkedIn, and just to show that we're there. I have conversations with many people on LinkedIn to show that we're accessible. You're not just a number at Salesflare like at most other companies. We treat you as actual people, so we try to go that extra mile there.
Wonderful. Speaking of LinkedIn, just curious, I know we talked about you using content marketing. Are you using, and less on paid ads because you don't want to fight that fight with folks that have more budget, but how are you using social? Because you have a bunch of content that you're creating, whether it's like through podcasts, other people's podcasts, there's articles that you're writing. Do you use social media?
Yeah. We mainly use Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Facebook, the organic reach is not really big nowadays. We spend a little bit of money to expand our reach, and we can also be quite selective. We can say some of our customers need to see this. People that recently were on the blog need to see this. People that are in a prospect audience need to see this. So you can set this kind of stuff. You can also retarget them with it, Then on LinkedIn, the organic reach is good. So we just post stuff there. And depending on what it is, it gets, if it's just a blog post or so, it doesn't get a whole lot of engagement. Probably 10 to 15 likes or something, 1,000 views. I don't know exactly. If it's something more hypey, then it can get a ton of likes and views. And sometimes you just have to treat LinkedIn like Instagram, and then just post some stuff on there, and people really like that. And then on Twitter, we just keep maintaining that, but I must say it's not really the best medium for spreading content nowadays. I think Twitter isn't really made for that. It's more for discussions and all. So we post stuff there, but I honestly don't think it matters much. And we do these things through a tool called StoryChief. So it's a tool in which you can write your blog posts. You can post them to your blog. It integrates with WordPress and all. But at the same time, also then it can automate the posts on the different platforms. And you can even use it like to make a campaign where you re-promote it later. We don't do that, not in that way at least. And that makes
what is it called? Is it StoryChief?
StoryChief, yeah.
Okay. Great. And that makes it more, sorry, you were saying.
Simple, automated. You can schedule everything. It has all kinds of tools built in. It's a really elegant piece of software. I like elegant pieces of software.
Yeah, who doesn't? Absolutely. Okay, I haven't heard of StoryChief, so I will check that out and also include a link when I put the information in the podcast. So that's perfect. You not only talked about challenges, but you talked about more of what's working for you. So thank you for sharing like the social media part of it. What about, okay, we talked about the fact that there are a ton of CRM players out there. There's also a ton of like SaaS startups that are selling to sales, head of sales or sales teams. I actually found this information the other day. There's 10,000 SaaS startups, and majority in the US, and the majority are early stage. And I was shocked.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you focus on differentiating yourself? We talked a little bit about it, the fact that you're like putting out really good stuff out there to rank higher in Google search for, organic people that have some intent, they're looking for something, and they find you there. What other ways are you like trying to differentiate yourself? Maybe you'll say the podcast, right? Coming on, partnering with other folks, spreading the word through the podcast. Anything else that you're trying to do to really differentiate yourself from others in the sales tech space?
I also mentioned the product and the customer support and the focus on reviews. Well, I didn't really go into that yet, but we do ask people for reviews when it's the right moment. We don't ask it through some automated. Well, we also ask it through some automated email, but that doesn't really work. It's really when you build relationships with people and you have a bit of you have that, how do you say, you make a deposit in the emotional bank account and you can then withdraw, yeah, something like that. It really comes down to that. When you have a good relationship with a customer, you can also ask for a review and they will happily do it. We don't have to give coupons or so for that. That's something we try to focus on, and based on that, we are currently the number 10 CRM on G2, I think, the number 3 easiest to use, and the number 1 easiest to implement, and the number 2 with the best ROI, and I don't know. So that works, and it does get us some traffic as well. But really, in the end, it's, I think, mainly on trying to bring quality in everything we do and not have acid. That helps. And we're probably quite obsessive about some stuff that also helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about how you stay creative? How do you keep, because you're a marketing minded person, how do you keep your marketing fresh?
I personally stay creative by reading a lot. And I don't like to read things that are, well, sometimes, I mean, things that are directly about the thing I'm doing. I try to read more broadly. And that helps to get new ideas. I find that when I'm reading, I constantly connect things just by putting more information in your brain. Somehow it's like you have this thing that you're thinking about, and then you read something, and then you're like, oh yes, I can do that and that. Podcasts also, they help more actually than reading blog posts, where people share what they do, and they go in a slight bit more detail, and they do something that you knew is possible but you never thought about it that way, that helps. And then having some free time, but that's if you have time to read a book, listen to a podcast, sit somewhere and think over something. Those are the things that really help. Being in the middle of things doesn't help to be creative if you're always busy. Then it's hard to, I don't know how to say it in English, but in Dutch we would say take off your eye protectors. Like a horse has these kind of eye things with which it looks straight. Take that off. That only works when you stop working for a bit and do something else.
I've never thought about the eye protector for horses, but that's a really nice. When people are looking down at their phones and walking, it's almost like the same thing. You got to take off those blinders and really see what's going on around you sometimes. So that's a really nice analogy
exactly.
there. What would you say are some bad recommendations in your area of expertise? So you're, startup founder, marketing, sales, like what are some really bad recommendations out there?
Oof. I try not to remember those, so it's a hard question now. The first one that comes up is related to what we already discussed. It's like in content marketing, quantity is more important than quality. I totally disagree. I mean, it's good to have some quantity, but I don't think we have more than 200 blog posts, maybe a bit more. And still we're able to rank really highly and get a lot of backlinks based on that. I don't think we need to necessarily write much more, but rather double down on what we have to a large extent and then add a bit more, but and really improve the quality. I think that recently I'm just connecting something to that we did was focusing on the performance of our blog, and all of a sudden our search engine rankings also hugely bumped up. It was super unexpected. It's really like the just making sure that it loads a bit quicker has a very big impact. Other bad advice.
That's fine if you don't know any bad advice. That means that you're pushing it out of your head and using more of the good stuff and the books you're reading and podcasts you're listening to, the good stuff. That's good too. Unless there's anything else, I can't. Let's talk about
Another thing I'm thinking about. I don't know whether I used to work in an agency, and I know how limited the sort of attention was that we could give to stuff for our customers, and I was always disappointed with how much work I could do for them and at which price. I would definitely, as a startup, never give work to an agency unless it's for a very specific thing that I know they're really really good at, and I will never figure it out. Then yes, otherwise I would totally stay away from that. And I see a lot of startups spending a lot of money on that, and I just don't get it. I guess it's out of some sort of belief that they will never be able to do it themselves, and then they rather spend the money. But yeah, it's, I think it's probably a lot of money down the drain.
Well, I'd have to say that you're a unique person with a unique situation because you're not only product minded, right? As a founder, you're also you're well rounded. So you've got a marketing mind. Someone on your profile had said that you're really good at writing. You're not only analytical but great at writing. You've got this understanding for big picture marketing strategy, concrete marketing tactics, and I can tell by our conversation that you really know deep on a deeper level about a lot of marketing concepts. And I think that is unique to find in a lot of founders that are much more technically minded, right? Product minded, but not necessarily. And you worked at an agency, so that's different. That's unique, I would say. But I hear you on that. If you can do it yourself, definitely do it yourself. And if you can make the time for it, right?
Yeah.
So tell me about Doctura. I'd love to hear about this company that you founded. What was it? Like, who was it for? What problem were you trying to solve? And then what happened with it?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask because, that I like to ask folks about things that didn't actually work out in their careers. And like, what learning did you take with you to help build Salesflare?
Yeah, well, I tried. Doctura is still on my LinkedIn profile because I use it as my management company, let's say. It's sort of when I pay myself a salary, it's from Doctura, and it sends invoices to Salesflare, whatever. But back in the day, what it was let's start from the issue. So doctors are a huge group of people who need to follow research but they're not researchers, and they don't go super narrow like researchers. They want to go a bit broader, and they want to follow this and that and that. Now the whole way um, scientific publications are set up is that you have a sort of a magazine which is very specific, and it's one magazine with a bunch of articles that are peer reviewed, blah blah. And then there's another one and another one, and you can subscribe to these magazines. But it's not a good solution for doctors because they would have to subscribe to a lot of stuff to follow all the things they're interested in. Plus, they might miss stuff because they were in that magazine and not the other one, whatever. So to solve that, I had built this kind of do you know Flipboard? It's this kind of RSS feed reader, but then a more modern one. I sort of built that, but then for doctors, and it could you could say like, I want to read stuff on this and this and this topic, and then I had built this sort of algorithm that, based on the information I could get in the PubMed API, it could calculate a score of relevancy, and then find out what the most interesting articles were to out of the big amount of articles, surface the right ones around the topics they were interested in, to make sure that doctors could stay up to date in a much better way. Now, where it all went wrong, because it's definitely served a big need, is that I didn't think it through from the beginning, how it would make money. And that was a pain point. I didn't really find an obvious solution. And that is fine if you're, let's say, a Silicon Valley founder in between all kinds of people who throw enormous amounts of money at you before you ever see money coming in. But that's not how it works in the rest of the world, I would say.
The real world?
Yeah, the real world. There you have to have money to get money, and so that didn't work out. And I learned that the hard way. Also, I looked for a technical co-founder, and I only found people who already had a job, and it's very hard to convince someone to stop their job if you don't know how you're going to make them money. Like, give them a salary and all. So hard issue to solve. Then after that, actually, I focused on like I sort of got a little depressed, a little only. I never got really depressed, but from that, and then I got this great idea. There was going to be the World Cup in Brazil. You know, my wife is Brazilian, so she knows all about, you know, all the different spots in Brazil. And I figured I could make a website for everyone who's going to go to the World Cup in Brazil, and explain to them what kind of trips they could build around the games they were going to see. It worked quite well. That's where I learned a lot about SEO, which is a really interesting, because in my job at the marketing consultancy, I didn't do a lot of SEO, but there I read all about it, and I figured out how to set up you know, like a WordPress site and all the different SEO plugins, and how you had to do technical SEO and to rank things and blah blah blah. And I got some traffic for it, and then I had these affiliate things set up that if people that would book a flight or so after they read how the best way to fly was and where you could book it, and I did make some money from it, but you can imagine how it went. World Cup Brazil, boom, nothing anymore. Yeah, so that was dumb. Then around the same time, actually, I was working on a few things. I was by background, I'm a biomedical engineer, and I studied afterwards a sort of an MBA when you come straight out of school. And then I went to work in the marketing in a pharma company, and then in a marketing consultancy. So I was into healthcare at the moment, and there was this first health startup weekend in Belgium. where they would start health startups. So it was perfect for me. It was super interesting. And I went there. I joined a team that was making a telemonitoring solution for. It was basically, there's a lot of pacemakers out there in people, and they send out all kinds of signals. And every manufacturer has a different portal in which the nurses can follow up what's wrong. But in most departments, they use a lot of different brands, and then they have to go into a lot of portals, and it's a mess. So we had built this thing that would initially, because these portals didn't have APIs that you could connect to, we scraped the emails that the nurses would get in and then feed them into a dashboard. And in that dashboard, they can then find the old information and click through. We won the Health Startup Weekend. There were some people from the Belgian government in the jury and stuff, and they said, well, maybe you could come to this accelerator and pitch for it. We went there, we pitched, we got funded. I think we got 50K to start with. And then the issue was that we were just a bunch of guys who met each other at a health startup weekend, and we all had jobs. We didn't really know each other. I mean, we had a lot of fun, and there was no sort of big commitment there, and it was all we had we had money. We were sort of not doing much. At some point, I decided to just get out of the company because I had other stuff to do. By now, the company has raised many millions. But yeah, I'm not part of it anymore. Basically, what happened in the end was I was the head of marketing, between air quotes. It's the CEO who, in the end, took it further alone. The one who was leading the project at the startup weekend, and he's still working on it.
That's a really interesting story. Yeah.
Actually, right before Salesflare, how that happened is that's actually what I scrapped the other company for. Is I met my co-founder while I was working on Doctura. I was in an accelerator, and he was in the same accelerator, and it was the Founder Institute, and we were helping each other. We were in the same sort of group all the time. We had the different company. And then at some point, he calls me. He's like, hey, I'm going to a conference in Vegas. It's this big IBM conference because I'm making business intelligence software. It was basically software that was compatible to IBM products. And they got a booth there. And he suggested he still needed a salesperson. And he suggested I join. And they would pay everything, and we would be a week in Vegas, have some fun at the conference, sell some software. And I said, sure. And we went to Vegas, and it was so successful, that conference. Basically, I would stand in the hallway and say, do you use IBM Cognos? And then people would say, yes. And I said, oh, you might have this and this issue. They're like, yes, we do. And they're like, oh, we have products for that. And then I would ask some technical question. And I was not in business intelligence, so I would then say, oh, there's something for my colleagues here. And then I would get the next person, and I would constantly bring them new leads. In the end, we had like 130 leads, hot leads, I think. And we went back home full of enthusiasm. And that's actually when we ran into all of the CRM issues, where we tried different pieces of software and all that to start following that all up and actually closing these hot leads. It was very, very hard to manage. And that's where we got the idea then also like, oh, but actually all these things we're doing manually here, that tracking all that information, a system could do that for us. You can see like we were in a startup that was managing data already, sort of, but then for other purposes. And then that was actually more exciting than the business intelligence software. So that got also scrapped in the end, and now we're almost 7 years on Salesflare by now.
Oh my goodness. That's so interesting how just like these twists and turns, right? It was just not a very clear path to get to where you are right now. So thank you for sharing that story. That's really cool. You kind of like jump in wherever, and figure out how to do something successfully, and that leads you to your next thing, right? So even
Yeah.
Doctora isn't really, I mean, it didn't work out, but you learned something, you went to the next thing, you learned something, you went to the next thing, and like you had successes over time that led you to Salesflare. So that's fascinating. Thank you so much, Jeroen, for sharing all of the cool stuff you're working on, all the marketing, all going deeper on some of those things, and also just your particular experience is very refreshing. So thanks for coming on here. And if anybody wants to reach Jeroen on LinkedIn, you can go to find Jeroen Corthout on LinkedIn, or find out more about Salesflare by going to www.salesflare.com. Thank you, Jeroen.
Thank you. This was fun.